Now with us, he hosts VSiN Primetime with Super Bowl champion Sean King. It is our guy, Tim Murray. Tim, it's a pleasure to have you on tonight, buddy.
Jeff, what's happening, brother?
You know, the tournament kind of changes the way we all act, right? Kind of changes our weekend plans a little bit.
Yeah, it's Friday was something, man. Saturday was a little better, but I'll go through it quickly because I feel like sometimes people like to commiserate with the losses more than they like to sit with us while we enjoy the wins. Friday, my wife and son were in Disney, so I hopped the plane after the show. Producer Britton Hess was driving me to the airport, and I was watching Drake on my way there, one of my first bets of the week, and watched them collapse 16-1 to close out that game. Tucker DeVries, Player of the Year, goes 1 of 13 from the field, so that was fun. And then on the plane, short flight from here to Los Angeles, Santa Ana, I watched Memphis turn the ball over, middle of the court, as I had them not only to win that game, Jeff, but I had a feeling that the East region would open up, which it did. I just picked the wrong team. Our buddy Will Hill, he's got a live FAU ticket to make it to the Final Four. I had a Memphis ticket to make it to the Final Four. So not a super great Friday, but we moved forward and somehow, some way, I middled last night's Gonzaga TCU game. So, hey, I can't complain much about anything right now.
No, hey, look, with how that ended, that's pretty darn good. It's funny, Tim. You listed all the games on Friday, and, of course, it's just how it all worked out. Friday, I was the exact opposite of you. I had the opposite sides. Great. Beautiful. And then Saturday, I just couldn't see anything right. It was just one of those days. But that's kind of what the tournament is, though.
And the way that I bet, I mean, I was sitting there on Thursday night. I'm watching, I had a little bit on Oral Roberts, so that didn't come home. But I'm watching that game, and I'm hearing how everything unfolds and how everyone's talking about it, even prior to the tournament, right, where they were kind of the chic pick coming out of the East region. And then Tennessee, with Ziegler being out and, just their struggles offensively, and then they hold on for dear life against Louisiana. And I'm just sitting there and I tweeted it out. I'm like, I'm going to have to be on Tennessee in this spot. I know what the world's going to be doing. And, that's why Saturday ultimately ended up being a pretty good day because Tennessee pulled that one off. I was on Arkansas as well. So, hey, it's a roller coaster ride, man. I wish we could all just easily pick winners. But, I said this on Gil's show this morning, Jeff, and I'm curious your thoughts on this, especially first round to second round. I'm a big, and you've worked with me, many times, you know how my brain works, right? I'm very, reactionary to how the public and just the perception's going to be. And the NCAA tournament to me is one of the most reactionary betting events, I think, of all of them. I mean, look at, Duke, Tennessee, for example. Everybody in the world was on Duke because Duke won big, Tennessee barely wins. Look at Xavier Pitt, for instance. The splits vary on Pitt because Xavier very fortunate to beat Kennesaw State, didn't cover. And then you look at Pitt, and they cruised past Iowa State in that ugly first-round matchup, and Xavier was the right side from the jump. So, it's really interesting. Miami, Indiana, to an extent. I don't know if that was a massive public side one way or the other, but Miami, just ekes it out against Drake. Indiana, I thought, was pretty comfortable in their victory against Kent State. And then Miami plays a terrific game yesterday. So you're even seeing a little bit here. Houston has played really one quality half of basketball so far in the tournament. And if you look at some of the betting splits, and I think some of the perception, it's, oh man, I can't possibly lay that many points with Houston against Miami, which ultimately might be the right side. And we've seen Circa dip down to 6.5. But I love kind of the instantaneous reactions that everybody has, where you almost have to take a step back and just kind of isolate it all and then make your decision from there.
It's an interesting point, Tim, because you look at the way that, and I think Pitt Xavier was a perfect example of it, even more so than Duke Tennessee, because I think, like you said, a lot of the pre-tournament thoughts where Tennessee was slumping the last 6 weeks, and Duke just was awesome the last month of the regular season. I think that played a little bit of a role, even as much as Duke throttling Oral Roberts in Tennessee, letting a pretty mediocre Louisiana team hang around and only beating them by 3. But that Pitt-Xavier game is a perfect example of what you're saying, where Kennesaw State didn't just clam up and really just stop playing offense, that would have been the Owls and the Panthers in that game. Instead, Xavier is able to survive, and that was part of the reason I was like, you know what, that looks too good to be true, getting that many 5.5, 5 with Pitt. I'm going to stay off and just go to the total and take it over because of just how out of control under that Pitt-Iowa State game was, and that Xavier-Kennesaw game ended up going under as well. And that ended up being the best bet by far in that game, other than just laying the points with Xavier, Tim.
Yeah, no, and I mean, you go back to the Xavier-Kennesaw State game. I mean, Jack Nunge makes this incredible move, to go from one block to the other, where it looks like Kennesaw State's easily going in, I believe, to take the lead at that point, and Nunge comes out of nowhere and swats it away, and the rest is history. So, yeah, I mean, everything is not created equal. Obviously, look at a team like UCLA. They're dealing with a ton of injuries right now, but the market, at least initially, is backing the Bruins here, and that number has started to creep up just a little bit. So, yeah, it's really interesting. UConn, if you look at some of the advanced metrics, shot quality this time of year, I've referenced them a lot. You look at their box score for UConn and St. Mary's, where, on the surface, it looks like UConn dominated that game. And, nothing in the world in gambling is gospel, but shot quality said St. Mary's would win that game by, 10 points. So I take that very much into account of a lot of things. So, yeah, nothing is easy here trying to figure this all out. But, I'm fascinated to see a lot of these matchups. I think, fortunately where we live, for Las Vegas to get its first ever NCAA tournament games, and the 2 games that they get on Thursday, I think you can make an argument are the 2 best games of the Sweet 16, at least on paper, because you look at Arkansas, a team that's loaded with talent. What's going on with Nick Smith Jr. only played 16 minutes in that, second round victory. I think he was, apparently, crying in the bathroom after the game because he's just like in a funk. And then Gonzaga, UCLA, when the bracket came out, I'm looking at this bracket and saying, oh my God, we could get Gonzaga and UCLA in Las Vegas, knowing the fan base that Gonzaga has, how familiar they are with the city of Las Vegas, with the West Coast Conference Tournament, and UCLA being here in Las Vegas too. And oh, by the way, 2 years ago, these 2 teams played in the Final Four, and the game ended on a half-court shot from Jalen Suggs. So that game and everything that is building up into that game, and how many players, Jeff, played in that game 2 years ago, hopefully it can be as good as we're building it up to be, because in my mind, I'm building that bad boy up quite a bit.
Tim, I will say this, and I'm agreeing with you 100% with everything you just said about the West region. We're talking about 2 of the most talented teams in the country, in UConn and Arkansas, that have a little strain of stupidity within their gameplay.
A little bit. Yeah.
So that makes anything in play in that game. And then UCLA and Gonzaga, where Gonzaga looks like Gonzaga these last 3 weeks, and UCLA, even with all the injuries, that's a pretty good Northwestern team that they handled in the round of 32. Even with no 1 seed, I think 1 through 4, top to bottom, the West region, those 1 through 4 teams, they're the best, and that's even with Tim, the Midwest region, basically having chalk.
Yeah, no, I agree, and I know we're up against a break here, but once again. And why I thought Arkansas was live on Saturday was, at the end of the day, the talent could prevail. And what Bill Self did, being the coach that he is this year, and getting that team to the level that they did, kind of a la Marquette. At the end of the day, Jeff, you got a lot more talent, at least on the surface, on that Arkansas roster.
Arkansas has 2 lottery picks on their roster. Kansas has none, probably.
Playing right
well. Maybe one in Grady Dick. We'll see. Tim Murray's going to hang around. We got more to talk about next here on the GPE. With us right now, the host of VSiN Primetime, one of the 2 of them, alongside Sean King. It is our guy, Tim Murray, with us right now. And Tim, let's let's start going game by game here in the Sweet 16. We'll start on Thursday night in Madison Square Garden, where the 7th seed is favored. Michigan State is a 2-point favorite across the board against Kansas State. I know Tom Izzo's history in March. I know that Kansas State was one of those teams that the market did not love, even though they were a good regular season team. But even this surprises me a little bit that this has been aggressive to Michigan State early.
Yeah, I mean, we've seen, I think, a flip of favorites, either pick or -1 and move towards Michigan State. The numbers are staggering. Chris Felica, the Bear, was on VSiN Primetime with me and Sean earlier tonight, and he does those tweet storms in college football, and he did it tonight regarding college basketball. Tom Izzo's 18-6 straight up in this round and in the Elite Eight. I mean, that's just insane.
Pretty good.
What he's done, and he's kind of holding the water for the Big Ten, who was a disaster in the first weekend. But here is Michigan State doing what they do and taking out Marquette. And I think the thing that I pull from the Marquette victory, was Michigan State's a very, very good three-point shooting team. Top 10 in the country at 38.7%, but they don't shoot a ton of them. They're only 301st in the country per KenPom in three-point field goal attempts on the season. So when they shoot them, they go in. And they went 2 of 16 from 3 against Marquette, but still were able to win that game. And then you look at Kansas State, and I always wonder, at this point of the year, and I'll try to be brief because I know we want to go through a lot of these games. This isn't a game I've played yet. I'm looking hard at Michigan State in this spot because I think a little bit towards like a bowl game, right? Is this a spot where you got Tom Izzo with that extra time to prepare against Jerome Tang in his first go-round as a head coach? Obviously, he's been fantastic. This is a team that was finished dead last in the Big 12, and here they are in the Sweet 16. And Marquise Noel and Keontae Johnson are fantastic players. So looking at the Spartans in this spot, haven't pulled the trigger just yet. I want to dive into a little bit more, but I tell you what, the line move early on is a bit telling to me.
A little bit scary for me since I think Kansas State's way better than they are, but just sometimes the market tells you stuff you don't want to hear, especially on these tournament games. Tim, I want to go to the West region. I want to go to that game we mentioned because Arkansas and Connecticut. Both of these teams have flaws. But when they're playing well, both of these teams are as good as anyone. It's a 3.5-point line, which, again, Kansas and Arkansas was mostly 3.5 until it closed 4. So it's the same line against the 4 seed for Arkansas as it was against the team on the 1 line. Tim, all I can tell you is I think anything is in play with this game, knowing how talented these teams are and knowing how out of control these teams can be.
Yeah, there's no doubt. I mean, and, you look at KenPom, he rates it as a 6-point game, so take that for what you will. Sometimes KenPom's an incredible resource for these types of things. Like you look at the Tennessee-Duke game, he had Tennessee laying 3. Market said it was Duke laying 3.5. Tennessee ends up winning the game. I want to know what Arkansas is going to do with Nick Smith. He only played 16 minutes, like I mentioned, in the win against Kansas. Was pretty ineffective against Illinois. Devontae Davis was absolutely tremendous in that second half in the victory. UConn, St. Mary's missed a lot of open shots, and that's something that jumps at me. The computers absolutely adore this UConn team and have basically the entire year. Jeff, this is a team that at one point was number 1 in the country per KenPom back in December when they went out to PK 85 and won that thing. They've been, top 6, 7 the entire year, and now they're sitting, in the 4th spot. So I agree. I think anything can happen here. I think the talent alone makes me want to lean towards Woo Pig in this spot. But UConn is a team that it seems like they've kind of they've overcome that hurdle that Hurley needed because they had not won a game in his time. But I do wonder if you look at how St. Mary's shot the ball, if Arkansas can maybe overcome some similarities to that and and thrive here. I'll tell you this though, there'll be plenty of Woo Pig fans out in Las Vegas. There is no doubt in my mind If I had to guess right now, it would be more of an Arkansas crowd than a UConn crowd. That's just my hunch from the jump.
Yeah, maybe. I think this is going to be an unbelievable travel region. It doesn't. And again, this is a region without a 1 seed. We're talking about strength and adding strength in numbers for the fan bases as well. I think those UConn fans are going to travel, though. They want to get out of the cold of the Northeast for March. You traded in for what we got out here. You know what, Tim? I want to go to Friday because I know you have something on this game, and yep. we'll pivot back to UCLA Gonzaga before we let you go. But San Diego State and Alabama. Alabama's getting bed in the market here. This was the open 6.5, mostly 7.5, even some 8 out in the market right now. The Aztecs really had a dogfight against Charleston, found a way to win and cover, and then really thumped Furman in round of 32. Alabama, look, I know they won by margin against Maryland. I wasn't that overly impressed with them the way that game went, Tim. So I'm a little bit surprised the market has gone the way that it has on this.
Yeah, and it might keep going. I think the public, and you see it now in the futures market, Alabama's the favorite to win the title. I think rightfully so. Because Houston struggled a little bit and they have their injuries. But I think maybe we're getting a little bit too over-exaggerated, overexcited around this Alabama team. Look, when it hit 8, I took a little 8 on San Diego State, and I think it'll come back. I do. People have seen 2 performances from Alabama, like you mentioned. They should have covered the first game. They didn't, but still a 20-point-plus victory over Corpus Christi, and then a runaway and hide situation against Maryland. This is a better Maryland, essentially for San Diego State. This is an elite defensive team, top 5 in the country. And I think what it all is going to come down to, in my opinion, if you believe San Diego State has a chance to stay within the number like I do, is, how is San Diego State going to defend the 3? They are top 5 in the country in defensive 3-point field goal percentage, and Alabama loves to shoot the 3. They're top 10 in the country in field goal attempts per field goal attempt. It's the metric there on KenPom. 47.5% of their field goal attempts are from 3. They're good, not great at shooting 3s. And if they get bogged down, it's going to be interesting. Another thing is tempo. Tempo in the Maryland game. Ultimately, I guess you lean a little bit towards Maryland controlling that to their style with 67 possessions, but ultimately, Alabama won that game by 22. This is another spot where, tempo, top 5 in the country are the Crimson Tide. For San Diego State, you look at them and what they want to do. They want to control the tempo. They're, bottom 100 of the country. So I love this stylistic clash that we're going to see. And I'm a big believer in San Diego State. I have been for a while. I bet them to make the Sweet 16 at, around plus 154, I think is what I got it at. And I think they have a shot to not only stay within the number, which is why I bet it, but I also think they have a shot to, make this a 1-possession game or 2-possession game down the stretch here. So we'll see. I'll need, Matt Bradley to play a really big-time game here. But I think the folks are getting a little too excited, in my opinion, about Alabama right now.
If San Diego State were to pull the outright upset, Tim, we could be looking at a very strange team of some sorts being in a national title game when this is all said and done. Because that bracket just totally is, especially what's happened in the East where, hey, maybe KenPom ends up being right. Maybe the Vols end up making the national championship game when this is all said and done.
I think, I'll be honest, and I know we are hitting a break here. I think Florida Atlantic's got a little bit live too here. I think this is a spot where FAU was in the role of favorite in the second round, didn't play well against FDU. Tennessee got to embrace that underdog role. You flip that narrative now, and I'll say this, Michigan State fans, they're going to be cheering for FAU, don't you think? They're in the Garden, so I think FAU is gonna be a tough out for Tennessee.
Should be a fun game, that's for sure. Tim Murray, everyone, you see him on VSiN Primetime. Tim, thanks for joining us tonight.
See you, Jeff.
Visit VSiN.com to get current odds, listen for free, find showtimes, and download VSiN sports betting podcasts.